Okay, and what I want to do in this video is start to introduce an economic model that we can use to try and look at and examine changes in the macro economy as a result of essentially changes in spending. Well, you may say to me okay, it's called the circular flow of income, why are you talking about spending? What I want you to keep in mind is that when we are talking about income and expenditure on a macroeconomic level, they are the same thing, or at least they add up, to the same thing. So that if I walk into your shop and spend €10, that is €10 of expenditure for me, that's €10 of income for you. Granted you, of course, but still, total expenditure in the economy is €10, total income in the economy is €10, and as such, total income equals total expenditure. That's why it's called the circular flow of income. Of course, it's still national income that we're looking at, and we're trying to, as I said, trying to develop at the very, very start, to develop a model that will affect or at least influence correctly our understanding of how a change in aggregate expenditure in the economy could cause a change in other macroeconomic variables. So the circular flow of income diagram looks at the flow of money through different economic agents. So again, I really have to stress this, guys. We are looking at spending. We're looking at how much money goes through. And don't forget, it's spending and income because they are the opposite sides of the same coin. Okay, so what we're talking about is we're chasing money, we're chasing euros around the economy and the effect that they have on different economic agents. Well, what do I mean by economic agents? Essentially people that work and spend, okay? That's what I'm saying. Essentially people that work and therefore earn income, they produce output and earn income and then spend money on the goods and services that they so desire. Well, who spends money? Well, we've got people in general, we've got households, okay? So they spend money on consumption goods, okay? We've got firms, they spend money on investment goods, buying machines and capital and so on and so forth in order to produce the goods and services that you and I buy and therefore make a profit. We've got the government, and we'll look into that, why the government spends and on the type of spending that governments engage in. And we've got foreigners as well when they buy our exports. But don't forget, guys, we also buy their imports, okay? So when we look at spending in a later subunit, we'll see that it's made up of consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports, and we take away imports because that's money leaving the economy, okay? That's not money earned by, let's say, the domestic owned factors of production. Now, as I said, I'm Irish, so I'll be looking at this from an Irish point of view, but this will apply all the way across the board to no matter where you're from or whatever, okay? It's irrelevant the country that I've chosen. I've just chosen it because I am from that country, okay? And the circular flow of income diagram, the one that we're looking at now, is the simplest version of that diagram. Now, what I mean by simplest, it means it is the least complex. I'm not necessarily saying per se that it's easy or whatever. And if you find it difficult, that's absolutely fantastic, no problem whatsoever. All it just means is rewatch the video so you can understand it. The main point I want you to understand when looking at this, not really a diagram yet, but will become as such, is that there are only two groups of people in this economy. We're looking at the macro economy, which is studying the economy as a whole. There are only two groups of people, not two people, two groups of people. Okay, we have Irish households and we have Irish firms. Now, the next thing that I want you to keep in mind is that Irish households, in this simplistic view, oversimplification, not always true in reality, own all of Irish firms. Okay, Irish households own all Irish factors of production. And let's just think about that, right? Well, if there's no foreign market, there's no government, there's no banks, there's no nothing else, okay, it's only Irish people and Irish firms. Well, who owns firms then? Well, it's people that own firms, okay? But not only that, who works or seeks employment in firms? Well, it's people, okay? Who lends firms money? The bank. And who owns the bank? It's people. Okay, who rents land to firms? Well, it's the owners of that land, and who are they? They're people. So what I want you to understand is all factors of production are owned by Irish households. So any money that is earned in a firm, and don't forget, you've got the entrepreneur, that person, he or she is part of an Irish household. Okay, so he or she owns the firm. You've got workers in the firm. Well, they are also belong to Irish households because hopefully they don't sleep in their job. They go home to some form of dwelling. Okay, you've got the owners of the land from which the entrepreneur is renting in order to have their business on it. Well, they live in Irish households. And you've also got, and I'll just say the bank for the moment, okay? You've got the bank who lends them money, and they're all our four factors of production. Okay, well, there's no foreign trade in this model yet or anything like that. So that's owned by people, and there's only Irish people in this world as it stands now in this model. So therefore, Irish households have to own all the factors of production. Well, let's look at this, which means all the elements that are involved in a firm. Well, what do Irish households do with their money? Well, obviously, they would spend it on some of the output of Irish firms. Now, let's say there is one particular entrepreneur and she owns, I don't know, a cafe, for argument's sake. Just keep it nice and simple, right? If people spend money on her coffee and her tea and all that kind of stuff, well, it doesn't mean that money is going to go back to them. It's going to go back to her and back to her household. Okay, that's how that's going to work. It doesn't mean that the money that you spend goes back to you. All it means is that it can leave Irish households and go to Irish firms. Now, what do Irish firms do that? Well, they have to pay their workers, they have to pay their landowners, they have to pay the lender, the bank, and then they keep some for themselves. What I have just said, those four groups are the rewards to land, labour, capital and enterprise. They are the factors of production. We have already said that Irish households own the factors of production. So what happens is they spend their money on stuff they buy off shops, and then when those shops make that money, they have to pay their workers, the landowners, the banks, and then keep some of it themselves. So that's land, labour, capital and enterprise. So those payments go back into Irish households. So then what we have is this idea of a circular flow of income. Yes, there's spending here, but that spending is earned income. And then from their output of goods and services, all the four factors of production that are involved in all Irish firms, they receive payment from this spending. Okay, so what we're seeing is that the money is going around and around and around. Now, the first thing I will ask you to do is just draw this diagram, So if you can just pause it there, right, and then just draw this down. My advice actually is that you leave a full A4 sheet of paper over the next series of videos in order to draw down the proper circular flow of income diagram. Okay, so I would ask you to pause the video here and then draw that exactly as it is, taking into account payments of factors of production, the arrows going here, there and everywhere, and spending on output of firms, Irish households. Can you pause the video there, please, and draw that? Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to do that, and now my question becomes thusly. What would cause firms to produce more? We have said this over and over again. Production is wealth, production is wealth, production is wealth. Why? Because what we produce, we can't consume. Okay? So what would cause firms to produce more and as such make us richer? Now that is a question that I would like you again to pause. Okay, pause there, look at that question. You certainly don't add that to your diagram, that box in the middle, and then see if you can answer it. Okay, now guys, what I want you to understand is I'm going to go through this answer and kind of up-level, do a few extra things. I'm not trying to confuse you, I'm trying to keep it all happy and safe. What would cause Irish firms to produce more, which means we'd have a higher national income, a higher real GDP, and as such be richer? Well, what I would suggest, at least according to this diagram, this model here, is if more people spent their money on the output of Irish firms, what would that mean? That would mean that firms are selling more goods and services. If they're selling more goods and services, they're earning more income. Okay, but still, we're just saying that hasn't caused them to produce more yet. Now, in order for firms to keep up with the increase in demand, people are spending more, they would have to produce more in order to increase their profits, because more people want to buy stuff. I know I can make a profit if I sell it to them, so let's make more stuff. That's every firm in the economy. would increase, or at least potentially would increase their production as a result of people increasing their spending. You go to a shop, you buy everything in the shop. It's all gone. Okay? That's an increase in spending because you wouldn't have done it otherwise. And then the next 100 customers go in and say, here, where's all the stuff? We're looking to buy stuff from you. And it's like, this one person came in, they bought everything. I'm just on the phone to my supplier now. I promise you I'll get deliveries as soon as I can. Now, if that happened for everybody in every single shop in the economy, I know that's an extreme case, and every single shop rang their supplier and said, I need extra deliveries like now. Well, then the stocks that those suppliers had would run low very quickly. So they themselves would have to produce more stuff in order to supply you and your shop. So in order to produce this extra quantity, firms would have to employ more workers. That's true. Because they want to produce. They're incentivized through the profit motive to produce more goods and services in order to satisfy this increase in demand, total demand in the aggregate in society, okay? Total demand for everything has increased, all right? Not just for one or two goods, but for every single good that's made in Ireland has increased. I'm going to refer to that as aggregate demand. So they're like, we've got problems. We can't meet that with our current levels of production. We're going to have to hire more workers to produce the increased amount because people in general are buying more than they were previously. So an increase in spending on the whole, I should have said, or in the whole economy could cause unemployment to fall. Now, I just want you guys to think about that for a second, okay? Go back to the diagram that you've look at the diagram that you've drawn, see if that makes sense. Pause the video here, look at the diagram and see if that does make sense. I really, really hope it does. It's very important that you understand this idea of aggregate demand. And if total spending has risen, then total income will rise. And in order to match the increase in aggregate demand, the demand for all Irish stuff made, or the demand for all domestically produced goods, firms would try, if aggregate demand increased, firms would try to increase their output. And one way they could go about this is hiring more workers. Guys, thank you so much. I really, really hope that helped, and I really, really hope to see you in the next video.